Apple's saying today it's going to invest $500 million into MP Materials. As a longtime Apple watcher, you saw that and thought what?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Apple has taken every opportunity through the history of this company, dating back to even, the iPod, where they've bought storage and memory up in bulk, again, because prices of those things can fluctuate. So I think anytime that you can come in and buy in bulk, something that gives you a fixed price, that you can control that pricing for yourselves going forward, they're going to make that investment every time, right? And in this term, right, whatever rare earths they need in order to manufacture, right, whether that's parts of product or batteries or whatever that is, those are the things that they'll secure up if they can, and it makes a lot of sense because, again, in supply chain management and being able to keep costs down, that's a very strategic move.
Let's stick with Cook. You saw how there was an analyst, made some waves, put out a note, provocative, asked, listen, maybe it's time for a change in the C-suite. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sentiment is really just coming from, wanting to see more modern leaders or people who are coming up through the ranks that haven't been there or might bring a fresh take to the business. And I think, again, right, the reality is if there was somebody better, like if Tim Cook or others thought that there was somebody better within Apple to run and move this company forward, I think they would make that change. Like, I don't think this is a matter of pride or or stubbornness. I think he's still the right guy. The investors believe he's the right guy. The board believes the right guy. And in fact, I believe a lot of the executives believe that he's the right guy. And so I think that's a key part of them keeping him in position. But now this, again, comes back to a new era of execution, which, again, he is now overseeing more of those businesses.
Yeah, and Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, I saw reported, Cook is staying put. On the question of Apple and AI, Ben, there are investors who are disappointed with where they're at. You can see that in the stock and how it's reacted so far this year. We're down about nearly 20%. What do you make of that? How do you think about Apple's role in this AI market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ways to just understand, I think, where we're going here is more not in one technology or one winner is going to win everything here. I think people like to bucket OpenAI or Google or others and say, like, these are the ones that are going to win. Like, this isn't a winner-take-all market, right? And that's in today's era of just querying, right, ChatGPT or Gemini to do some search. We're moving to an era which is far more agentic, right? Which means that you're going to have an agent. That agent is going to work on your behalf, and it's going to understand, you, Josh, your preferences, your likes, where you're at in the world, your location, like intimate levels of details of you, and then go work with other agents, Google's agents, Amazon agents, Meta's agent, et cetera. So you'll have this one thing, and all those agents will have domain expertise. And I think that's Apple's goal, is to have domain expertise, again, on the customer, on their ecosystem. And that's something that they can easily do, right? They don't need to boil the ocean. They can partner with OpenAI or Gemini if you just want to search the internet. But the key is having a smart, intelligent, and intimate agent that knows you, that can go and work on your behalf for actions, do predictive things, do things on your behalf. And I think that's their broader strategy. And it's just doing what they can do well, which is create a much more agent or much more friendly customer experience when it comes to AI.
And can they get this done in-house in Cupertino, Ben? And I ask you because I've had analysts come on the show and tell me it is time for Apple to bring out the checkbook. They're going to have to make a big deal, a big AI deal. I had one analyst tell me it should be Perplexity.
Yeah.
That would, historically Apple does deals, but they're smaller. I think the biggest one that was biggest ever was Beats for $3 billion.
Right.
What do you make of that line of questioning?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's two things, right? Apple always doesn't just look at technology, they look at culture. Is this a cultural fit? So that's also a question you've got to ask, is who could they buy that fits in to the broader culture of Apple? But I think, again, I like Perplexity. I use Perplexity. They're a little bit of a different company. You still need a big foundational model, even if you're using Perplexity. So that doesn't entirely solve Apple's problem. I think there's actually some smaller acquisitions that can be made. You pointed out Mark Gurman actually said that Mistral was being looked at, which is a large foundational model. I think that would make a ton of sense. And there really are a lot of startups coming out of the Valley doing really interesting things. And there's some of those teams and those individuals and their technology might be a better fit for Apple. But again, I think they don't necessarily need this big world internet foundational model. I think if they've got this agent that's got domain expertise, and that's about their ecosystem, their software, you, the customer, and your preferences, and that agent can go work with other agents, which is how the world we're moving to in agentic AI, I think they have everything they need to do on that vision. The question is, do they want to do more than that?
All right, it's time now for our question of the day. How popular is Apple's stock right now? Maybe not such a crazy question. Here's why I'm bringing this up. In today's BFA Fund Manager survey, it was noted that in the past 3 months, since April, global investors have raised their allocation to the tech sector by the largest amount since March 2009. During that span, though, Apple stock has underperformed Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Nvidia by a country mile. Lauren, what happened to Apple? It used to be, I mean, everybody seemingly owns Apple, but now they are perhaps owning more of everything else in the AI space.
Well, I can't speak to Apple specifically, but I can speak to something I see very clearly happening within this tech space. We've spoken a lot today about the foundational layer of artificial intelligence, the semiconductor chip makers, manufacturers. We haven't spoken as much about the infrastructure layer, the energy companies. And then there's a third layer, the application layer. And this is where many companies outside of Apple have had more early releases, opportunities for their customers to deeply engage with new functions related to AI and what that can do in their daily lives. And that application layer, we are really only in the very earliest, I would even say pre-stages of what that will look like, not only for us as consumers, but also for businesses and the technologies that they use to enable their workforce. And so I would say the jury is still certainly out over who the winners and losers will be, and elements of data and personal security, where Apple has historically been strong, might be areas that gain more importance as this application layer builds out.
Ali, I'm going to decode this movement in Apple in real time. I'm using my iPhone to download AI applications from everybody else. And until Apple comes out with its own AI functions, they need to do, they're unlikely to regain that story, that bullish thesis.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why we've seen these year-to-date declines. They've just disappointed on the AI story. And fun fact for you, Brian, NVIDIA is $1 trillion larger than Apple at the current moment.
That's a good fact. That's a good one.
That just gives some perspective here. But to Lauren's point, the use cases on the consumer side for AI, we just haven't been there yet. And that's an area that down the line, Apple could potentially double down on it, and we could see that momentum. Right now, it's really focused on those hyperscalers, a lot of B2B. For a company like Meta, that's been utilized by its advertisers, especially its smaller advertisers. So that's why we've been able to see these outside gains in some of these other Mag 7 companies. Apple, typically, they're not the innovators here. They usually sit back, they wait for the innovators to do their thing, and then they come in and make a better product. So that could be something that we see down the line here. Apple also focused on that user privacy data. We have seen some, shaky data with ChatGPT, Gemini, those types of products. So again, something that Apple might just want to sit on their heels and wait a little bit.
Just fix Siri. Please, Apple, and tell us things aren't going to be bad in China.
Let's start with Apple. Big topic this week, Gotham. We had analysts at Lightshed put out this note asking, is it time for a new CEO at Apple? You, my friend, as a guru on all things C-suite, leadership, management, your answer to that question, Gotham, what do you think?
No, it's not. It wasn't that long ago that you could give Tim Cook credit as having created more value as a CEO than any other CEO in history. And we're talking about like 2 to 3 years ago. It's not that long ago. From a customer's perspective, it's not like Apple is falling down on the job. Sales on their products are phenomenal. People like what they're doing. Even if you hear the sort of complaint that Apple's not what it once was, nobody thinks it's anything but pretty great. This seems largely a market thing about the fact that Apple is not taking advantage of the same boom that AI, that price rise up that AI is giving to a lot of the other Magnificent Seven. And look, Apple's acting differently than the other ones. That is true. Like, they're clearly behaving in a different way. Historically, when Apple's behaved in a way different than other high-tech companies, that's worked out pretty well for the shareholders. I would not want to pull the trigger quite so quickly that it's going to fail this time.
Also, Gotham, just talk to me about what I come back to is also the skill set. You need to run a multinational giant like this. I mean, Cook, he's got roughly 160,000 employees. He's got literally billions of devices all around the world. To run a giant like this, Gotham, I just think through how much you have to know about product and tech, about operations, about supply chain. You also have to be a diplomat. You have to be the person who can get on the phone with the President of the United States and make your case eloquently and powerfully. How rare is that, Gotham?
So, I mean, it's vanishingly rare. Sort of the list of people on Earth who have the experience to do something like this is incredibly small. Almost all of them are the CEOs of other companies who aren't going to Apple. And let's think through the logic here, right? So either you're going to go with an insider or an outsider. If you're going to go with an insider, it's going to be someone who was picked by Cook, who was groomed by Cook, who grew up in this environment. So the odds that he or she is going to do something radically different are really low. If you're going to go with an outsider, then first, since you're going with an outsider, you have essentially no way to guarantee that they have the incredibly rare and diverse set of skills that you just described. So you're taking a very large risk by putting in a leader who you really can't be sure of in sort of the crown jewel of American capitalism. On both sides of that equation, that strikes me as a pretty risky bet to make.
Breaking news coming from Apple announcing a chief operating officer transition. Jeff Williams is stepping down from his role as COO later this month, and here with more, we got Yahoo Finance's Dan Howland. Dan.
Yeah, Saban Khan's going to be taking over previously the senior VP of operations, but I think the broader thing here is that Jeff Williams was largely kind of seen as Tim Cook's potential successor. He had done everything from lead operations to have the design team report to him, worked on health initiatives, the Apple Watch, everything from the iPhone to the iPod. He was in his 27th year, and it really did seem as though it was leading towards him eventually becoming CEO of the company. Now, not so much that he's heading out the door. I think one of the things to consider is not only is this a major loss for the company, but it also points to the number of kind of defections we've seen from Apple. This is obviously defection, it's retirement, but the folks who have managed to kind of move out of Apple as of late. And it's been a huge number. On top of that, we just had Meta scoop up their head of foundational AI models. And so it does feel as though Apple is in quite a transitory period where they're going from kind of this relative stability with their leadership to this time where they're going to be transitioning to perhaps a different set of heads at the company. We'll just have to see what that means for the future. Tim Cook, the design team will now report directly to him, so it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But yeah, I mean, a wild kind of piece of news on a Tuesday.
To your point, Dan, I think if you asked most people who they thought was going to take the reins, it would be Jeff.
Yeah,
right? I mean, you're the guy who's running operations, knows the company inside out, tested veteran. I mean, you can argue, top three, maybe the second most important person there in Cupertino.
I mean, what did Tim Cook do before
exactly.
he was the COO, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he helped develop the supply chain there. Williams kind of came in, continued on with that. And so, I think that's part of the larger reason as to why they thought, why everyone thought that he would be the kind of go-to. But, I mean, we'll just have to see who among the remaining leadership would be up there. Obviously you have Jaws, who's still there. Craig Federighi.
Jaws Red.
A dark horse, maybe, Craig Federighi.
Software head.
Yeah, I mean, he could be the person, or Eddie Q, obviously, who is currently the SVP of services. I mean, those are really some of the folks that I think, really stand out. Federighi has that kind of pizzazz factor. He's always out on stage. So it would be interesting to see him do that. But really, we just kind of have to see where they go now.
Big news on a Tuesday. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.